Hi everyone, and welcome to the Cosmic Calendar, which is going to look at the energies of the waning moon cycle, which start with the full moon in Aquarius on the 22nd of August and continue through to the 7th of September when we have the new moon in Virgo. So we begin with this full moon, which, as we know, also coincides with the ingress of the sun into Virgo. So this is the start of Virgo season, and also with the trine between Mars and Uranus that happens on the same day in Earth signs. So this happens in the signs of Virgo and Taurus. So this is really very interesting energy. Actually, it shifts us quite quickly into from kind of fire and air energy, of this full moon, which is happening in the signs of Leo and Aquarius, and it moves us very swiftly into that Virgo energy, which is very much earthbound. So it's almost like we kind of go from the sky. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which is all about the god of the sky, and we come down to earth, you could say with a bump, but I think in this case what's going to happen is that we're going to find our feet quite quickly. So we've kind of been thrown up into the air by the events of the full moon, and we come down and we sort of hit the ground running, if you like, because Mars is making a very positive aspect to Uranus. This is really about breakthroughs, about sudden progress, obstacles miraculously being removed, seeing things in a new way that allows you to solve a problem and kind of move forward, to be innovative. But the other thing to bear in mind here is that Uranus is retrograde. So this means that the energy either comes from within, it's kind of focused inwards, or it means that we're looking at the past. So we're trying to maybe reform something that didn't work in the past, maybe do things better second time round, kind of when you know better, you do better. So almost getting a second crack at the whip, a second chance, the opportunity to kind of improve, to tweak, to upgrade something that wasn't really working before. And of course, Uranus is the planet of technology, while Mars is very much associated with things like fast-moving vehicles, so like cars, for example, especially internal combustion engines, because Mars is so fiery. But it can also be things that have to do with engineering, because we're talking about Mars being in Virgo, which is very detailed energy. So it's almost allowing us to kind of ground sufficiently that we can power through details that might normally kind of confound us, overwhelm us, or kind of bore us to death. So not the devil, but rather the kind of the angel, if you like, is in the detail, and it's in the detail that we're going to be able to find ways to get around potential obstacles, to fix things, to find like the other day somebody found a security hole that in Sushi Swap that could potentially have affected the entire network. So that's a very good example of Mars trining Uranus in a way that's very constructive. It's solving a problem very quickly before it becomes a disaster. In the kind of technical sphere. So you could, as I say, you can apply this to a lot of different things, kind of moving forward, particularly when it comes to anything that's earth ruled. So it could be to do with the way you earn money, maybe making some tweaks that will help you to earn better, maybe getting a better shopping cart, for example, just small changes that end up making a big difference. And a lot of it has to do with a perspective shift, because Uranus is very often about those kind of aha moments, those perspective shifts, that willingness to see things through new eyes or to do things differently. So innovation really kind of paying off now, leading to huge kind of leaps forward. And then the very next day on the 23rd, we've got a beautiful, very grounded trine between Venus and Saturn. So this happens in air signs. Venus is currently in Libra, the sign of relationship and of kind of justice and equality. And Saturn is retrograde in Aquarius, so the sign of humanity and of kind of altruism, if you like. So this is an interesting one. Kind of on the in terms of a first level interpretation, we're talking about making promises or commitments to things that we value. So we might decide to donate some money towards a worthy cause. We may decide to invest in something, maybe legal advice, for example, or some kind of professional advice that helps us to make some real progress when it comes to our business or our career, for example. But generally speaking, with Venus being in the sign of Libra, we are talking about ways to ground and stabilize either finances, creative projects, or kind of romantic sort of entanglement. So this can sometimes be when we get proposals from, or sort of offers, romantic offers that are kind of solid in nature. So somebody making a promise to us, a commitment, a classic one being, like an engagement. But it could also be somewhat more unconventional, because Saturn, even though it's a conventional planet, is in an unconventional sign, Uranus. So this could be about doing something slightly differently. So maybe deciding to go for a binding ceremony, or choosing to move in together rather than get married. And when it comes to finances, it might not necessarily be about making, like, signing contracts or investing in traditional forms of finance. It might be doing something in the digital domain, kind of buying cryptocurrency, or entering into a smart contract on the Ethereum network, something like that. But the nice thing about this combination, as I say, is that Venus is not so flighty, because it's being stabilized by Saturn, which is very good at keeping promises, is very reliable, it sort of meets its commitments. So it's very mature energy, and it could also be that, as a result, you approach maybe a creative project in a much more disciplined and creative, and sort of in a way that allows you to really produce something of substance. So lots of positive iterations of that, and of course much will depend on where Venus normally sits in your chart, what houses it rules, and of course the same with Saturn. And then a few days later we move into slightly more murky territory, where the opposition that's been kind of active for the last week or so finally perfects. So this is Mercury now making opposition to Venus. I mean, not to Venus, to Neptune. So Venus did this a couple of weeks ago, actually, and I think it caused quite a lot of feelings of overwhelm, because it does tend to dissolve boundaries and to blur things a little bit, so that it's difficult to get clarity. And I think this is likely to be true of deals, any kind of business deals, negotiations, any form of exchange. So this could be social media, it could be like a stock market, any kind of exchange or market where there's two parties sort of trying to do a deal or trying to negotiate. There could be some kind of sometimes it can be about deception, that there's something that's hidden. People are a little bit fuzzy about the details. They don't want to commit to specific promises. You might have a contract that's not terribly clear. So you're being asked to sort of try and balance the Virgo Pisces polarity, which can be a little bit idealistic, so it can have very, very high expectations, but at the same time these are two very different energies. So Mercury in Virgo is asking for clarity about nailing down the details, whereas Neptune in Pisces is kind of being extremely vague, maybe a little bit kind of flaky, not really keeping its promises, not wanting to be tied down in any way, or to kind of commit to one side of the argument, if you like. So it could be a little bit of one of those where it's best to put off any kind of legal discussions or negotiations for another day, possibly once Mercury enters Libra, which happens here on the 30th, so the following week, the 30th of August. That's a much better time for any kind of legal negotiations or discussions, etc. And also to perhaps just be careful about what you say on the 25th, because it could be that you speak out of turn, or you don't really think it's difficult for you to think things through logically, and therefore you may kind of say something that you later get criticized for, or that you didn't really think through clearly, and so it can kind of come back to haunt you. So yeah, I would definitely avoid making commitments or saying anything definitive on the 25th. But then the following day, much like we had with that Venus opposition, it was followed the next day by the trine to Pluto, and we're having the same thing. Mercury's following Venus's footsteps here. So on the 26th, Mercury makes this beautiful trine to Pluto, and this is the complete opposite energy. So Pluto really helping Mercury to, from the, both are in kind of the earth element, Pluto being in Capricorn and Mercury in Virgo. These are really helping us to make kind of important life-changing decisions, maybe making a fairly dramatic change, or it might seem like it from the outside, but maybe we've been thinking about it for quite some time, because Pluto moves quite slowly. It can also be about somebody like coming through for us, really sort of having our back. It's very much kind of linked to persuasive arguments and to being able to put forward your kind of side of things in a very persuasive and clear way. And I mean, it's also very much about getting to the truth of things, getting to the heart of things. So it could be that you've been puzzled about something that somebody said, maybe on the 25th. Maybe somebody said something a little bit vague and you wondered what they meant. And then, a day or so later, you finally, the truth comes out, or you get to, you cut through the BS and you kind of get to the kind of the crux of the matter. And you're able to see things much more clearly, and this helps you to sort of make some important decisions. It can also be when we talk about change, so when we have those tough conversations, or those potentially awkward conversations about things that are taboo or that are awkward. So having the courage to sort of have those important discussions, because they can lead to some real, I don't want to say breakthroughs, but to real and tangible change that can benefit everybody. So it's also a great day to go and see a therapist, or to kind of to talk about things that maybe you'd normally be embarrassed about, to be a bit more open than usual. And of course that's always difficult for Pluto, because Pluto is usually quite secretive, much like Scorpio, which it rules. So I think that by kind of sticking to the facts, Virgo is very good about facts and details. By kind of concentrating on what is workable, or what is kind of practical, you can sort of make some real changes here. You can have breakthroughs in negotiations and that kind of thing, by avoiding being overly emotional, or kind of too mired in the hypotheticals, if you like, and kind of getting much more into the practical details of the nuts and bolts, if you like. And on the same day, Venus is making an opposition to Chiron. So this can sometimes be when we get a little bit triggered. Romantic wounds can be triggered. Issues around money can get triggered. It can be painful type of energy. But Venus is one of the benefics. It's the lesser benefic. So even though it's in opposition to Chiron, I still feel that there are kind of opportunities here to find more positive ways of living with our wounds, for example, or of kind of coping better in areas where we feel a little bit inadequate. So there is potential here, I feel, for for some kind of healing event, or at the very least making peace with a situation that may have kind of plagued you, for some time, like a sort of a wound that keeps getting sort of activated, if you like. And then we've got a couple of sort of niggly aspects on the 27th and the 28th that call for compromise, change, adjustment in various sectors of our lives. So we've got Mercury, Jupiter, which is more about kind of mindset and communications and beliefs, on Friday the 27th, and then Venus and Uranus on the 28th. So this may be when we're called to make some changes, either in terms of our financial arrangements, or within a romantic partnership, perhaps due to some unforeseen circumstances that kind of come along and throw a spanner in the works. But then the following week we move into much calmer waters with Mercury's entry into Libra. So it's joining Venus in Libra. Venus ingressed into Libra earlier in the month. Where is it? Here, on the 16th. So sort of 2 weeks later, Mercury kind of joins Libra. So this allows for a much more balanced approach to the way that we think, so we can think in a much more orderly way, and we can often dialectical thinking, or sort of contrasting ways of thinking, can often help us to make decisions. So having your lists of like pros and cons is a very good way to sort of go now if you've got sort of important decisions to make. As is playing devil's advocate, so looking at things from both sides of the coin, or getting somebody to sort of help you do that. It's also great for anything to do with legal contracts, wanting a fairer deal, to negotiate a fairer deal when it comes to your salary, for example. And it just is about kind of calmness of mind, so great for meditation. Anything that brings peace of mind is really sort of highlighted when Mercury is touring through Libra, as are things like diplomacy and sort of peace talks. And then we move into September. So the next major aspects that we have as we move into September is an opposition between Mars and Neptune. So Mars is now following in the footsteps of both Venus and Mercury, making its opposition to Neptune. This is a tricky one, I have to be honest. When Mars and Neptune are in negative aspect to each other, it can lead to escapist behavior. So that kind of pueri turnus, the kind of what do you call it, Peter Pan syndrome, where we want to just sort of run away from our problems, or we feel overwhelmed or tired, and so we just kind of flake out. We lose momentum maybe halfway through a project and we don't finish it. But I think really what is kind of being called for now, if you think of Mars as being about vital energy, is to kind of maybe take some time out, some like R&R, so kind of pause, take a break, and press the reset button, because trying to push through Neptune is really like trying to push through treacle. It's very difficult to pin down. There's no kind of end or beginning to things. It's very miasmic, so you can't even kind of, there's nothing to fight with, because it's like mist, like a sword cutting through mist. It's kind of pointless. So if possible, I think try and do something much more restorative, like spend time meditating, go for a walk along some stretch of water, listen to music, have a massage, go to the spa, have a swim, that type of thing. Lyrical activity, dancing, that kind of thing is probably going to be a lot more beneficial now than trying to sort of tackle things using willpower and kind of force. And then on the 5th, Mercury has its turn to trine Saturn. So this is great for any kind of rational or logical thinking. If you want to put down academic arguments in a paper, this is an excellent day to do that. Great for kind of coming up with cogent arguments. So if you want to write a political speech, you want to come up with policy of any kind, board meetings, if you want to kind of organize things or make some kind of plan, kind of draw yourself out like an action plan for the next few months. Great day to do it. You'll make excellent progress and you'll feel as though you've really achieved something. It's also very good for any sort of disciplined thinking. So, problem solving, serious communication, so like high level diplomacy, for example. But it can also be great if you want to spend time on your own. So as an extension of that opposition between Mars and Neptune, it's also a great time to sort of to find some me time away from the hurdy-burdy and just sort of reset a little bit. Take a walk in nature, turn off all, sort of white noise, go off social media for a day, maybe put your phone in the safe, and spend time in contemplation, because Saturn is very much associated with contemplation, which, Marsilio Ficino would say leads to the sort of higher forms of consciousness. So you start with kind of contemplation, kind of philosophical contemplation, and it then can often lead to a shift in consciousness, and you can sort of have breakthroughs in the way that you think and so on. So a really, really constructive day. And then on the 6th, also two really stunning aspects. First one with Venus. Venus will be trining Jupiter, and I mean, this is fabulous. This is the coming together of the two great, the great and the lesser benefics. So extremely positive energy, all about kind of following your bliss, about sort of feelings of kind of love, connectedness. It's really fabulous for any kind of pleasurable pursuits, for meaningful art projects, for raising money, you know, for a charity, for sort of anything meaningful, and just for love. You know, lucky in love is very much associated with kind of Venus Jupiter trines. But the only caveat is that it's also going to be making a square to Pluto. So this is because Pluto and Jupiter are coming into, I think, yeah, coming into orb, I think, of a square at some point. No, they're not. They're not. No, it's just the planets in the cardinal sign of Libra that are going to be squaring. Yes, that's right, because Pluto's in cardinal Earth. So given that Venus is making this kind of double aspect to both Jupiter and Pluto, I think what it's kind of signaling is that there may be some very positive developments in terms of love, money, or creativity on the 6th, but they may call for some kind of change, which is maybe a little bit scary, or that feels a little bit threatening because it's big. So in a way, we're really being kind of called to tap into that energy of taking the leap of faith that we saw earlier with, you know, with the Fool, and with the kind of living from that kind of heart-centered perspective. You know, sometimes good changes also involve, you know, intensity, being extremely honest, which can feel quite scary because it makes us feel very vulnerable. Speaking our truth in a way that makes us feel exposed to criticism, to domination or control. It can also be about, you know, positive habits, changes of habits, where we decide we want to do something that's much more life-affirming and kind of positive and healthy for ourselves, and that means letting go of controlling or dominating or manipulative behavior, or maybe kind of beliefs that have had a huge hold on us, that have kind of kept us trapped in compulsive behavior. You know, I'm thinking about the devil here in the tarot, which can represent, you know, our kind of our shadow stuff, you know, where we can get sort of mired in temptation, in self-destructive habits, negative belief patterns, that kind of thing. So just worth kind of bearing in mind. But then on the positive side, Mars is going to be making a trine to Pluto. So this is really about taking action. So it's kind of saying, you know, it's all very well to sort of sit in the blissful energy of Venus and hope that everything's going to work out for the best. But in order for this to happen, we have to take action. We can't sort of put our head in the sand and pretend that you know, everything will sort of, you know, that kind of magical thinking that we sometimes fall into, of like the movies, you know, everything will end well and it will all just fall into place. Fate will miraculously intervene. Sometimes we actually have to sort of take the bull by the horns and make a decision or take action. And in this case, Mars trining to Pluto suggests that we do need to direct our energy into positive pursuits. So taking strategic action now that will allow us to move in a much more constructive direction, that's much more conducive to long-term improvements. So really kind of beginning with the end in mind, deciding what it is that we value, and then working out how to get there, and then taking action steps to start that process. And the thing with Pluto is that it's usually fairly final. There's this sense often of kind of now or never, do or die, which, as I say, can sometimes raise the stakes or make situations feel more intense, but ultimately, in this case, the changes are for the better. So I think we need to have faith that things will work out for the best, as long as we're kind of adhering to what is healthy, what is fair, what feels like in our bones to be right, and then having the courage to then take steps, take action steps to make that happen, even if it means having to let something go that we know in our kind of heart of hearts wasn't really that good for us. You know, any kind of addictions or compulsions, that kind of thing, hidden vices. And then on Tuesday, this is when we kind of move into the new moon. So interesting that the sun is going to be making a trine to Uranus. So it's interesting that we move from the full moon where Uranus is making a trine to Mars, to the new moon where the sun in Virgo is now making a trine to Uranus. So interesting overlaps there with Uranian energy. But we'll pick that up in my next forecast, which will kind of move from the new moon forwards for the waxing moon cycle. But I hope that's given you a sense of the key kind of dates and highlights in the end of August, beginning of September, and that it will help you just sort of navigate the kind of cosmic weather for the duration of the waning moon cycle.